Hey, this is Christopher McClure, and welcome to the Shift Show. Today's topic is mirroring and validation. And you've probably heard me before talking about mirroring and validation as part of the tolerance protocol. Um, the reason I'm devoting an episode of Welcome to the Shift Show to mirroring and validation is because it's so important. And you know the other reason is that the tolerance protocol is it requires that two people agree to do it, and there's a little bit of setup, and there's a little bit of you know like uh, discipline regarding following the protocol. Um, but conversations in daily life happen on the fly, and very often um, it's not practical to set that up. We don't, it's like a conversation can get heated up, quickly, and by then to kind of revert back to a tolerance protocol is like difficult to do. So the mirroring validation is something that we can each individually practice in our lives, in the moment, when on the fly, whenever conversations are happening, um, especially conversations that that are can become potentially polarized. So I'm going to share my screen like I usually do, and I've got oh, uh, hold on a sec here. I need to go to screen sharing, and there. So if you haven't seen one of my videos before, this is called an Enneagram, and I call this, what I do with it, I call it Ancient Enneagram Solutions. This is a geometric figure which um, can contain any complete system of knowledge. I use it a way of organizing topics, themes. I actually use it in a lot of different ways. Um, Today, of course, we're doing mirroring and validation. And the first point here, number one, is rebuttals. And that's really what, you know, the first step forward. That's what mirroring and validation can hopefully prevent, right? Because when 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 someone says something and then the other person has a rebuttal, there's two things that happen. One is that the person who just said something will probably feel like they haven't been heard because um, it's like there's just a reaction to what they're saying, and they very often will feel like, did you even register my idea? Did you ever even take a moment to consider whether it would be uh, you know feasible, um, instead of just launching into a reaction to it? That's usually what happens. Whereas if the other person first of all says, well, I hear you saying that, um, let's just use an example. Suppose I say, I think vaccines are the way to go, and it's and vaccines uh, are always going to be better than, even if a person has had COVID and they have this natural immunity, it's always going to be a better, you're going to have a better immune response to COVID. And so if the other person just immediately, started saying, uh, if they started saying, well, there's no way that a vaccine is better than natural immunity. Like right away, it turns into a polarized argument. Whereas if the second person says, "All right, well, I hear you saying that you think that vaccines are the way to go. That it's you got much better protection from a vaccine than you do from natural immunity." Um, and and this is where the validation comes in. And I can understand how you would come to that conclusion, you know. Um, uh, However, I have a different viewpoint, and then they state their viewpoint. That um, I on the other hand feel that natural immunity is way better. I've actually seen information that says it's 13 times better than a vaccine. So there, what we're setting up here, and then the next person can mirror and validate, and we can actually have a discussion rather than a polarized argument. Um, so, like I said, when you don't use mirroring and validation, and it goes right away into the rebuttal kind of dynamic, the first person who spoke ends up feeling not doesn't feel heard, and then the next person, if mirroring and validation continues to not be employed, then the next person doesn't feel heard, and then the two people just start ending. They start saying the same thing over and over again because they don't feel like they've been heard, and it just becomes a shouting match. Um, so yeah, the whole idea here is to avoid this kind of polarization. Um, and to direct conversations more into a collaboration, that we're actually collaborating together with our ideas, and it's a belief. There's an inherent belief with collaboration that you know if we each if we respect each other's ideas, and we each you know have input, that we're going to come up with a result that's better than just what either one of us can come up with. Of course, this, mirroring and validation, it requires discipline. You got to catch yourself in the moment. It's so easy, when you feel a reaction, when you hear somebody saying something that you don't believe in, um, the reaction is to, hey, wait a minute, that's not true. And by the way, I don't have it down here, but this whole thing starts off with on the right foot if the people can be making I statements. In other words, if they're saying I believe, and from my perspective, rather than just saying, this is how it is, acting as like some authority about what's being talked about. The other thing is that it can get it can get a little tedious to every time somebody says something to say, well, what I hear you saying is, and I can understand, but I think the benefits from this are, they far outweigh the tedium, or the it's worth it, basically, is what I'm saying. Um, and what it does is it slows down the process a little bit, right? It slows it down enough so that people can actually, be heard. Number one, that there's time taken to, like, okay, this is what you said, but it also slows down the reaction time. It's like when you feel yourself reacting, but first you have to mirror and validate it. Chances are, when you're actually ready to express your view, it's going to be more of a response than a reaction. Um, and there's something, when I first encountered this idea of mirroring and validation through NVC, nonviolent communication, and when it was first presented to me, really didn't understand it. It was a part that I kind of just sort of left out, or at least the validation part is, the mirroring I kind of got, but the validation was just something. I don't know how to do that. I don't really understand, because I thought that I had to agree with the other person in order to validate them, and that is not true. You do not have to agree with another person to validate them. All you have to do is be able to state what their what their state what they have said, and to put yourself enough in their shoes so that you can um, you can you can understand how they would come to that conclusion. right? And so you're actually, you're supporting them for their viewpoint. And then when they feel supported for their viewpoint, then chances are they're going to support you for your viewpoint. And you don't even have to agree with each other. You can agree to disagree. And so this is all, but it's like, well, why bother with all this stuff? I mean, what in the end, if people are just going to argue, what can you really, well, this is what you can do about it, and the reason it's worth doing is because I feel, so here's a nice statement. I feel like the shift that we're talking about, when I talk about welcome to the shift show, we're I'm talking about a collective shift. The shift that has to happen is one of the biggest things that we have to get in order to shift is collaboration. That it's not any one person or any group of people's ideas about how to do it that are the way we're going to get through this. The way we're going to get through it is by honoring each of our perspectives, as if each perspective was a piece of a puzzle, uh, and that puzzle is the puzzle of wholeness, of collective wholeness. So yeah, I'm going to stop my share now. And so once again, this is welcome to the Shift Show, and this episode has been about mirroring and validating. And I thought it was important to do a specific, to be in a sense redundant and do a specific sort of focusing in, a spotlighting of mirroring and validating, because it, very often we don't have the context to like create a tolerance protocol, and to sit down with a timer and to, whereas, this is mirroring, validating. You can do in your daily life anytime, whenever you're talking to somebody, you can practice that. And by the way, it's better to practice it when you're not triggered than to try to do it when you are triggered. And so when you do it when you're not triggered and you start building up that muscle, then when you are triggered, it's like, oh, I've done this, I know how to do this, and you do it, and it's really helpful, in my opinion. So thank you for listening.